We don't want it to start creating solutions that are going to really make for bad animation. So, or glitchy looking animation. All right. So the other thing, we have some clothing affected, which is what we want because we want this to react to the clothing. I'm going to increase the influence here on the inner skirt. But then we also see that the inside of the coat isn't really affected. And then the outside of the coat is only affected so far down, much less than we want it to be. So we want that to be a little higher. So again, be careful you don't go too crazy here and start weight painting where you don't want to. You got to be very careful and rotate so that you're not painting stuff you don't want behind what you do want. And again, this isn't the final weighting for this because we'll be eventually most likely putting in some bones for we'll be putting in some bones to let it look like physics is taking control of things, but for right now, I just want a good solution so that I can at least start. Okay, and I want the inside to be a little, not quite as influenced as the outside. So let's see what happens. So if I select this bone, and I push that, okay, so that's not terrible. Okay, so we'll want this weighted a little bit. So the struggle, as you can see here, is that you don't want the inside to come out. All right, so let's do this. Let's assign bone, assign from envelopes. So that didn't really seem to do anything, but it did. What we want the root to take on is some of this geometry on the back side so that the top part of the coat is pinned to where it should be. We want it to do that on both sides. Really, we want all this to be root. And there's some spine in there, which is why I'm being kind of lightish on this. So it's tough with some of these details, but see, we're not affecting anything too much. So I'm paying extra attention to this pose to try to get things smooth because we're going to have the leg doing this a lot. And I want to make sure that it oh, weird. Huh. I want to make sure that oops, options, X mirror. I'll just do okay. There we go. So I'm paying a lot of attention to how things are bent with the leg, and in fact, I might even do this. Well, let me start here, and then I'll do that. But I'm trying to figure all this out because I want these things to be nice and smooth because I'm using this pose a lot. So that's why I'm spending a particularly longer amount of time on it. And again, the coat thing, it's kind of a pain sometimes. But I wanted you guys to see me deal with this problem. You know, one, because I'm using Goggle Girl as my model for the semester, but also because, like I said, you know, this is stuff you're going to run into when you weight paint. So I know that for the final and everything, you guys are using those simple models, but seeing things happen with a little more complex model is going to help you guys know what to do when you have those tougher modeling challenges and animation challenges. So as you can see, I'm doing a little bit of crossover here just to get some things weight painted nicely, stretching nicely when I do I want to get them stretching nicely when I do some of these poses. So as you can see, it's actually, we're getting it pretty well done here. Now again, you always need tweaking, but that's why we are going to, that's why you can pose during this mode, so that you can do those tweaks. All right, so let me, see, subtract that. Don't want that to come through. So as you can tell, very organic process. Okay, so I'm going to Alt-G that, and then I'm going to pick that leg up and then see what comes out. Okay, so we've got some crossover. So we want to fix that again, obviously. So I'm going to subtract some things, see what that does. So if you find yourself in a situation like this, go into perspective mode, and then you'll be able to get inside your model and make adjustments to things. And because being in perspective will make it nicer to get into stuff and really, really mess with things. All right, so how do we fix some of this? Sometimes it's just experimentation that's gonna And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, you can do those little things that'll get this to work nice. Cool. Okay, so again, what I would do here then is maybe even go into edit mode, and I might do this in the future, I'm not going to do it now, but I can go into edit mode, and then I would put a bone maybe here and here, or maybe a few just so I can get some IK on them, but that I can use those to make the flap, because right now I have it just lifting up. That's kind of inorganic. It doesn't quite reflect how that thing would fall realistically, but you know, if I add a bone or a few bones here, I can get that sort of how it would in real life drape down over the leg. So I can, you know, if you guys are working on this model, try it out, or I can, you know, make a version for you guys to see later on. But, you know, just be aware that that's normally how you do some of that stuff. And then let me just, oh, yuck, yuck, yuck. What did I do? That was bad. Oh, yikes. What did I have selected? Yeah, that's not really working for me. Okay, so yeah. So similar deal, sign from bone envelopes. There's really nothing? What? It's insane. Wow, total breakdown in the automatic stuff here. That's kind of annoying. So the other thing you're noticing is that, or you may be noticing, is that when we assign things, that we're assigning things only to bones that affect the body directly. So things like foot control, they're not going to get any weight because they have another job. Their job is to the job of those bones is to, oh yeah, that's way better. The job of those bones is to make other bones move and to make other bones do stuff. So something like foot control, we don't want it to have weight painted on it because that would just be kind of a waste of time and a waste of energy. We only want to we only want to have bones that are inside the body and doing stuff directly. So what I'm doing here, so you may notice that I keep jumping back in between assign automatic and the assign from bone envelopes. Basically, there are two different algorithms for how Blender is going to process how the bones are, how things in the character are arranged. Automatic from bones tends to be a little more conservative. Envelopes tends to be a little more enthusiastic. Experiment with both, see which one you think feels appropriate. I tried envelopes on the upper arm. I got what I have on the screen now. I tried the other one, and half the character's chest lit up. So, things are what they are. Okay, that's a pretty good start right there. Don't be afraid to second guess yourself. Don't be afraid to try again. Don't be afraid to redo. Things may or may not work out perfectly the first time. Or things may be pretty good. Try things out. So we're at about 2 hours here, and I keep working on this. Trying to think if there's things I should really show you guys, or if you guys. So there's 2 people there. I don't know. How are we feeling? Do you think you have enough information that you can go on your own, or do you think you need some guidance or any specific questions? Oh, I guess I could show you guys how to have the character hold something. Let me do that. Because I think, again, you've seen me tool around with this enough. You get the basic workflow. Let me show you a couple of different things here. So for the head, let me do assign automatic from bone envelopes. No, we'll just do bones. So at the head, a couple things. You want to, the head has to be everything. So like anything that's going to follow the head should be weight painted to the head. So, you know, the headphones should be weight painted to the head. You know, things that are going to be for specific parts of the head, you know, obviously should be for that specific part. So this hair, you should weight paint to itself. You should weight paint to the hair. Whoa, that's a little crazy. You don't want that to move. Yeah, whoa, dude. That's a little insane. So you might think about just, you know, weight painting that by hand yourself. But, you know, the head, you're going to want, you know, the headphones to be attached to the head and stuff like that, because it'll follow the head around. But, you know, the different parts of the mouth and everything you want to be attached just individually. The jaw, you will want to be its own thing. The teeth should be, so the top teeth should be weight painted to the head. The bottom teeth should be weight painted to the jaw. Let's see. The eyeballs should be weighted to the eye bones. And this is what I was talking about before with gaze. See? So you'll want to weight paint. Yeah, there you go. It automatically does it. But the nice thing about that is that now you can just have that be wherever, and you don't have to have it be part of the model. You can just have it move around. So if the character, you know, if you animate the character like picking her goggles up, you can just have it be, you know, you can move the bone. So that's pretty cool. What else? Oh, so I promised to do the holding. So let me Alt-G-R. Okay. So like I said, this is nowhere near finished, but you know, the rest of this is mostly just kind of tedious watching me weight paint, and that's no fun. We don't want that. So I'm going to save as 27. All right, so having a character hold something. This is, so remember, we're in weight paint mode for the model. So if we hit tab, we go to edit mode for the model. We want to get back into object mode. I'm going to hit this again. So we're in object mode. Now I'm going to select I'm going to select the whatchamacallit here, the sword. So I'm actually going to do two things here. I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to select the sheath right now. And how should I do this? So I'm going to select the sheath, and I'm going to hit P, and that will take the selection. Oops. Hold on. I select the sheath. L. Oh, wow. Interesting. Let me box select it just so I know I got everything. Make sure everything in the sheath is selected because there's a couple of UV islands there. Then I hit P, and I make it its own object. Now I'm going to hit, going to select the sheath and the character. I'm going to hit Control J. Control. What's that? What's going on there? Oh, wait. Weird. Okay, well, looks like everything's fine. So I'm going to take that and, all right, so it's part of the main character now. And the reason I did that is because I am going to, I can put a bone in this, and then I can, like I did with the goggles, where I just have a bone and it exists in the model off to the side. Once we animate it, we can animate it so that it's like on the character's hip. So I'll do that later. The thing that we care about now is this sword. So first thing you notice is that the sword is, its orange dot, which is its center, is over here still in the sheath. We don't want that. We want it to be in the middle of the sword. So we hit Shift, Control, and Alt, and then C, finger gymnastics. So Shift, Control, Alt, C. And we set origin to geometry. Boom. All right. So now our sword has its own center. All right. So now we go into edit mode. And then we are going to pick the vertex right in the middle of the bottom of the hilt. And we're going to add a, oops, no. We are going to Control S, Shift S, cursor to selected, go back to object mode, add an armature, bone. The armature's name is sword armature. And then we just make it so that the bone is there and it is in stick mode. All right. So we want the bone to be roughly just the size of the hilt before the handguard. And so that's that. We're going to pose mode it, and then we're going to put it in pose mode, add a constraint, copy transforms, goggle girl armature. Well, let's weight paint it first. So pick your sword model, armature, object, sword armature, and then select in pose mode, shift select object, weight paint, weights, sign from bones, it does that. We help it along. So this one's easy. All you need to do is just have the one, everything go with the one bone. So it's a lot less specific. So it's important to remember that when you do stuff like this, so like we're rigging a sword with one bone, and if you're ever doing, you know, a project with like product design and you want to create a simulated animation, I hate the word simulation, what did I just do? If you want to create an animation of the product in use, you could do a 3D animation, and if you could give the object one bone, and then the object can, you know, you can have it rotate around and fly around, and you know, if it had squash and stretch, you can make it squash and stretch to make it look like stuff's bouncing around and make it a cartoon character. But that's all. We just have one bone, and we can do all kinds of stuff. So, you know, like I said last week, don't think of these as it has to be human-shaped or human-like. It can be whatever you want. So, you know, we created a human, and then we've rigged a sword. That's pretty cool. So, all right. So our bone, now that it's weight painted, has a copy transforms. So we're going to copy transform to Goggle Girl Armature, and now her sword is coming out of her butt. But then we're going to bone of holding. Let's make her left-handed. She'll be like Link. Aha! Now you can see my madness has a method here. So I've taken that bone, target, armature, bone of holding. Now we pick bone of holding, and we position it. And that's the beauty of it being off of the armature completely. It's parented to the hand, but it's still disconnected, and that's great because now we can just move it about freely, and the sword doesn't have to be attached awkwardly to the hand. We can just put it where we think it should be, and then now there's a thing that I didn't show you. It's in the textbook, so I'd recommend looking at it, but you can actually make yourself a shortcut of you can give yourself a nice shortcut so that you don't have to pose all these fingers by themselves. You can make it so that there's another aid to just get a grip, but I just didn't think we had enough time to go over things in that amount of detail. I would definitely still check it out on your own, though. It's pretty cool. So let's rotate around. Oops. All right, now we have a hand that is holding a sword and able to swing it around. So the last thing I guess I should show is, now again, this character is not fully weight painted. We can go into some of that next week. Or I guess not next week because it's Thanksgiving next week, but the week after to finish off the semester. But I want to show you how to do some basic animation and how to use the animation tools in a basic way. So for this, I'm going to make a new window, and I'm going to select the dope sheet. So the dope sheet is how we do a lot of our animations. So we use the timeline and we use the dope sheet. So when use the dope sheet, Blender has the dope sheet is one of the primary, or it's really the primary animation editor. So there's this drop down that says dope sheet. What we want is this one, the action editor, and it has an object in it because each action is going to be treated as an object. So they will be used like assets, like creepy gum character. Sorry, it'll be each action is treated like an asset, so it's treated like an object itself. So it's the same in the outliner as the mesh itself or the armature. And that's really powerful because you can use, so I talked about this last week, but there's the NLA editor, the non-linear animation editor. So if you want to have like mix and match different parts of your animation together so that your character is running but then waves hello, use the NLA editor to match those things up. But each part of that, the run and the waving hello, will be an action that we're about to create. Game developers, you're going to want to, your actions are going to be exportable to game engines so that when you have an action that's called run, something like Unity will see that action and be like, okay, so there's this run animation in this model. So it'll import those as actual animations, and then you can use them within game engine animation systems to likewise mix and match and put into the animation state machine so that you can have it be like, oh, when this happens, when player gets hit by this enemy, play animation, get hit, and things like that. So I'm going to, now that we have the arm with our sword kinda-ish, sort of neatly rigged, it's not really, but sort of, I'm going to do a quick demonstration of how this works, and then we'll go into more detail when we have a better rigged model next week. And I can, so the homework, well, I'll send that out by email. But so let me build an animation real quick, and then I will send out some follow-up via email. So I've switched to animation editor. So I'm in the dope sheet dope sheet editor. I've changed from dope sheet mode to action editor mode. So I want a new, see this new button, new action, and it calls itself action. Well, that's not very imaginative. So we're going to call this, well, this is just a demonstration, so we'll call it demonstration. Okay, so a thing that you want to do every time you do this, you make a new action. Now, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, but in the future it will. There's this F button next to it. Click F. And it has a 2 next to it. What does that mean? Well, there's a technical reason that goes on in the background of Blender that, it's a thing to know. It's good party trivia if you're ever at a party of Blender aficionados. But truthfully, all you need to know is that by hitting F, when you save this scene, this project we've got going on here, this character, and you shut it off and you go and play some Star Wars Battlefront for a couple hours to unwind and then come back and then reopen your file, it'll still be there. Because sometimes, now, when it's your only animation, it doesn't matter. But let's say you've made 4 actions and you've hit F for none of them. Those 4 actions, gone, if you have multiple actions. So F basically tells it to remember that action for next time. That's all you need to know about it. But always hit F after you've made a new action. So we've got this. So what do I usually do? Well, I will pose my character how I want them at the beginning of my animation. So let's do that. Let's put her there-ish. Again, this is going to be terrible because we're not quite rigged and our shoulder will look like that. But whatever, that's fine for right now. So often what I'll do is you usually only animate with the bones that you're moving, but if you don't set a frame of animation and you have a lot of stuff, you know, rotated or something like that, you will only have, if you only put frames of animation for certain body parts, then the frames that you've not specifically animated will just be in their default pose in your animation, and then what once looked really cool will look kind of funky. So you'll typically want to mess with things such that you'll want to move things around such that you have a nice solution. Or, sorry, I'm trying to do 4 things at once. You will want to put frames of animation for everything so that, you know, if something is supposed to be in a certain state in your animation, even if it never actually gets animated, you want to make sure that you set its where it's supposed to be in frame 1. So what am I yammering on about? So let me hit A to select all bones. I hit I, and that brings up this, and I will click Loc, Rot, Scale. Now, insert keyframe brings up this big menu. And what does it mean? It means what do you want to key? Now, you can key only the location, only the rotation, only the scaling of different bones. That's really convenient. However, if you set rotation of a bone and you've changed its location and its rotation, it'll only record the rotation change. So any location information you've also changed will be gone. So you want to, if you've done a transformation, you want to make sure it's included in whatever type of recording you make. So I often just work in Loc, Rot, Scale. So I'm going to do that. Loc, Rot, Scale. All right, now everything is set at frame 0 to be there. Okay, so what am I going to do? So let me do at frame 15, so half a second. Let me confirm that. Okay. So this brings into the concept of frames per second. How many frames are in a second? Film people, you're probably looking at 24 frames per second. Game people, you should be animating at 30 frames per second. How do you know? Go to render context in the properties editor, and there will be under dimensions a frame rate drop down. By default, it's set to 24 frames per second. Animators, again, are doing stuff at 24 frames per second. Traditional animation is 24 frames per second. Game developers, and I am one of them, so I'm going to go to 30 frames per second. Okay, so let me just save as. That's what we do here. Okay, so I am there. So now I've gone to frame 15. So now I'm going to take my hand and go like that and rotate it. So maybe this is like some sort of sword hit or something. It's going to look terrible, but the point is not to look nice right now. The point is to just to demonstrate the animation workflow, and then we'll actually get to the how to make animation look good next week. So I have done that. I have gotten it to an end position. So I'm going to select my hand and my upper arm, which are the things that I moved. Because when you move the hand, the stuff comes with it. So you want to make sure that you capture its animation too. So low growth scale. So see, okay, so that's not quite what I wanted. I wanted there to be something in the middle here. So I'll want to change, I'll want to do some in-betweens. So when we animate, and again, we'll go over this, but when we animate, you're going to create what are called keyframes, and then you're going to create what are called in-betweens. So we just created a keyframes of the beginning and the end, but we see that it ended up being kind of inadequate. So now we want to create the in-betweens. Oh, see, I'll have to fix the rigging on that arm. All right, so I've gone to frame 6 and created this sort of wind-up. So I hit low growth scale. Okay, now let's see what it looks like. Okay. Now it just kind of goes down there. But I think here, let's increase the speed a little bit. So we increase speed by figuring out how many frames should be between different. We increase speed by figuring out how many frames should be in between poses on the animation. So there's a little bit of a slower wind up and then a very quick, because there's not much space in between these frames, a quick snap down, and then it just sort of drops. So to 15. So let's make, I'll give a better tour of this all next week, how to manipulate the time thing. But let's see what we came up with. This could be, again, it could be horrible garbage for all I know. Not the worst thing I've ever animated, but, you know. But that's animation, is the keys here are, move whatever, select whatever bones you want to move, pose them, and then hit I and use low growth scale, and that will record your keys. A couple other tricks. So while you're animating, if I select bones, so I'm going to select these arm bones again. On the bottom here of the 3D editor window, there's, at the far right, there's these 3 icons. One that looks like an arrow pointing towards a clipboard, one that's away from a clipboard, and one that is away from a clipboard with a blue arrow and a dotted line. So what do those mean? One is copy pose. So I'm going to copy the pose. Okay, so I select my bones that I have posed, I copy it. Now let's say that let's say I've done something really terrible like that. Now, here's the thing. When you have when you pose a bone, unless you record it as animation, if you move away from its spot on the timeline, it goes away. Okay, so that's important to remember. You know, an animation pose is not, a pose is not recorded into an animation until you hit I. But if I do something like this, and I'm like, oh man, I really screwed this up, I can select my bones. So I've copied the previous pose, right? I can click the little icon with the clipboard with the arrow pointing away from it, and there it goes, it pastes it. So that's useful if you want to have like similar animations. You can copy and pose, or you can copy and paste poses from one action to another. It's a useful thing to have. But let's say you're doing something where you're doing a run and you have yourself posed in one way. So let me actually create this scenario. So let's create something that looks more like a run. That's not rigged at all. Whoops. Okay, so we've got a one-armed run pose here. So I'm going to pick those arm bones, and I'm going to copy that. Now let's say I want to do the opposite for like when it goes to the other side, when weight gets put on the other side. So I have my bones still selected, I copy that pose. If I click the one with the blue arrow, look what happens. It mirrors it. So the blue arrowed one on the far right is paste mirror, and that's really useful, again, for when you're doing these symmetrical actions like running, and you want to have poses, you know, you'll go from one to a similar but opposite pose, again, like in running. So that'll save you some time and effort. So yeah, those are some basics and some basics of animation. Oh, the last thing I should show you is that on the on this dope sheet itself, basic dope sheet operation. The dope sheet works a lot like like any other selectable object. So the frames here can be manipulated in different ways. So you'll notice there's all this big long list of every bone. So there's all my bones. You know, you can control how the timing is done. So if I right click a frame, I can actually move it around. The other thing to note is that there's all these in green, the frames for individual bones, but there's also this orange one, dope sheet summary, that shows a line of any frame. So this is really handy for, let's say I determined that my animation, that's a little slow for a sword swing. So let's say I want to make it faster. I can hit A and select all the frames. And then whenever the green line is, the timeline indicator that works like the 3D cursor. So if I say, for example, want to scale, hit S, and I want to scale it down to, let's start with 75% of its length, so 0.75. Okay, it does that. say 0.6. Oh, scale 0.6. Okay, so it's 10 frames now. So I scale it down to 6/10 of what its previous rate was. But I started with my line at the 1 frame, and then it just shortened it from there. If I would have done it from the middle, it would have shortened with that as the base, and it wouldn't have worked. Oh, my dog's about to bark because the mailman is here. Nope. Okay, good. So that scaled down things the right way. But yeah, you can move, scale, you can't rotate, that would make no sense. But let's see what happened now. Yeah, that looks more like a sword swing would. So yeah, that's some animation basics. So that's it for today. I hope to see you all later. Any questions from anybody? Okay, cool. I will see you later.